Okay, so this extract is the exposition of the novel as the audience or the reader is introduced to the most important character of the novel, namely Jean-Baptiste Grenouille, and the setting of his birthplace, where much of this novel takes place. We can easily tell it's the exposition because the author begins with the traditional formula for opening a story, such as, quote, in enter time and place, there lived a man who, enter description of a character. Other phrases in the extract that indicate exposition include, quote, his story will be told here, and, quote, in the period of which we speak, which is inviting the reader through the first person plural we, and making clear that the story is set in the 18th century. Throughout this section of the opening chapter, the narrator provides a brief description of Grenouille, followed by a very detailed description of the scent of French cities during the 18th century. I will explore some of the elements of this description, how it fits in the overall plot of the novel, and finally I'll provide some detail about what makes this extract impactful in relation to some of the themes in the novel. So to begin with, the narrator describes Grenouille using a variety of adjectives, but the first that stand out are gifted and, quote, abominable, because they represent so much of his portrayal in the whole novel. We learn later in the novel that this character's gift is the ability to capture and interpret scent like no other human being. This, quote, gift helps him eventually become a master perfumer and uses talent to craft the most original or purest scent ever made. Meanwhile, this same, quote, gift is ironic because his intensified ability to smell the world around him is partly what motivates the character to murder innocent young women in order to achieve his goal of concocting the purest perfume that captures emotions associated with love. The other adjective, abomination, used to describe him is meant to foreshadow the terrible fate that he is forced to live, due to the fact that he also has a lack of scent from his birth, and is hated by human beings, including his own mother, who tries to kill him. This lack of scent scares people away from him, yet his apprenticeship with the perfumer Baldini later in the novel allows for this character Grenouille to explore his quest, albeit a very dark one, with deadly consequences for many characters, including himself. Although this character is fictional, the narrator contrasts Grenouille with other historical figures in order to make him seem historic and also to highlight his hateful qualities that those actual people may have displayed in history. Most importantly, though, the narrator lists abominable qualities, but brings us to a transition to the realm of scent. This is important because throughout much of the novel, the author focuses on vivid imagery through the olfactory senses. For instance, Grenouille's perceptions are magnified as he explores his world, while most settings are described with the same magnification. This extract contains a very negative perception of cities in France, with adjectives that evoke displeasurable smells such as moldering or greasy, pungent, rotting, spoiled, and rancid. The noun stench and the verb stank in past tense are repeated several times in order to reinforce this olfactory sense and allow the reader to feel revolted and to simultaneously empathize with Grenouille's literal sense perception and emotional point of view. In the final section, the author subtly criticizes the barriers that society imposes on ourselves throughout history. For instance, the narrator mentions several different strata or layers of society by describing the stench of the aristocracy, peasants, priests, apprentices, and masters. Even the king and queen are described pejoratively as stinking like rank lion and an old goat, respectively. By mentioning that all these ranks of monarchical society stank equally, the author's breaking down the culturally imposed status that distinguishes people within a group or society. Now, this theme comes up throughout the novel as Grenouille is disgusted by humanity. And this disgust leads for him deciding to become a hermit for several years. His quest is also to find a scent that unites people from different upbringings. So Grenouille's ability to fit in society is only because of his perfume, which he invents later and wears in order to convince others that he has a normal human scent. Towards the end of the novel, his contempt for society, or his hatred for society that is easily fooled by scent, makes him design an ultimate perfume that causes awe and adoration and eventually suicide by cannibalism. In sum, this extract highlights the very pessimistic perspective of humanity that's explored in other parts of the novel, since it provides a brief window into Grenouille's point of view and is reminiscent of the sometimes less desirable ways in which all categories of society can behave. Just as the title contrasts the sweet word perfume with the sinister description, the story of a murderer, this extract matches the macabre tone of the novel, which explores the contradictory gifts and abominations that societies around the world can sometimes produce throughout history.